Okay, so you're speaking of China, and in China they say a really good quote. I don't care if the cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice. And what that means is practicality. So we can have grand philosophical ideas about the way that we want the world to be, which is fantastic. But more important than that is practicality. How do we make change on the ground? And you mentioned China, so we'll stick on the China topic. We'll start with one cold, hard fact.
Yeah.
And that is, in the past 40 years, China has taken 800 million people out of extreme poverty. Right? So imagine everybody currently in the US and everybody currently in the EU, put them all together, that's 800 million people. China took that many people out of extreme poverty in 40 years.
Yeah.
So I'll revert back to my original point, practicality. Whether you believe in the Chinese political system or don't believe in the Chinese political system, there's one cold hard fact. The Chinese political system has worked for hundreds of millions of people across China. So now you look at Western economies, you look at Western nations. I went to New York not too long ago.
Yeah.
It's filthy. You go to California, there's homelessness everywhere. They say that England is broken. I don't really agree, but we have our problems. There's problems in the suburbs of France. There's problems in the suburbs of Italy. So irrespective of what philosophical idea you have, the facts are these. China is making strides in developing their economy and developing the welfare of their own people. And in the West, we're falling behind. So what I concentrate on is why, how that's happened, and maybe how we could make some changes in the West to improve the lives of everyday people like ourselves.
Okay. I mean, look, I've heard people on the left before big up China. I feel like it's probably the left-wing example when it comes to maybe not fully alternatives to capitalism, but what capitalism could be if the state invested more in terms of welfare. For the sake of, devil's advocate, what would you perhaps say to the people who push back and say, well, most people wouldn't want to live like the average Chinese person? They say the Western quality of life, despite the greater inequality, is typically better. What would your response to that be?
Okay, well, first I'd like to know the age of these people. Because if these people were 40, 50 and above in the UK, they would know from first-hand experience how our country has declined. How the amount of hours they would need to put in to purchase a house, to purchase, well, not a phone back then, but to purchase some building works or to own a building or to open a business. The amount of hours that you'd need to work in order to achieve that was significantly less then than it is now. So we've seen our real standards drop in this country. And I'm 30 years old, for example. In my lifetime, we've seen our standards drop in this country. And China's been the complete opposite. So people can be vocal about not wanting to live under the Chinese system. That's fine. But they can't deny that we could learn something from the Chinese in terms of empowering people. So it's not just the Chinese. It's the Singaporean economy that's done fantastically well. Singapore was an incredibly poor place just 50 years ago. In a generation, they've become an unbelievably significant country for their size. They've empowered their people. People have climbed out of poverty. And Singapore is known as a global hub now, a small island in Asia. Now the questions are, how did they do it? And these are the questions, well, the answer to these questions is what we need to implement into the UK. I'll go actually a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah.
So right now, in England, if you're looking for a job, you're an 18-year-old guy or girl looking for a job. You go onto LinkedIn, you go onto Indeed, you go onto all of the typical job websites. You'll see a job. The job is advertised by a recruiter. Therefore, you don't know which company you're working for. They won't advertise the wage. You don't know the wage of the company that you're working for. They won't advertise the location. They'll give a broad location such as London. So you don't even know where you're working. This systematic humiliation of unemployed people is the lack of the government's decision making. And it's these types of decisions that the Chinese government enforces very quickly. Now, you may say this on the flip side, if they make a bad decision, then it's enforced quickly as well. But by and large, they've made decisions which are beneficial for their own people. So I've just given you one example of how the government doesn't step in. I'll give you another example of how the government doesn't step in. HS2. They estimate that HS2 from start to finish, from planning to development to finish, will take around 30 years. China could do that railway in a year. So this country is not taking decisive actions on the things that people really need, the infrastructure that people need, the skills that people need to learn in order to help their people grow and invest in their own people. So that's unfortunately, the cold hard facts about which direction we've been going in for the past 30, 40 years in this country.
So in terms of things that the UK could take from China, like what specifically would you say would it be that government investment into housing, infrastructure, education, like we're saying, like public railways, like what specifically would you say UK needs to take from China?
Okay, that's a great question. So, as I said, in 40 years, 800 million people have climbed out of extreme poverty in China. 3/4 of the world's poverty reduction happened in China specifically. How did they do that is the question that you're asking. So, when people come from the rural sector into the more financialized and commercial sector, they pay more taxes. Not only do they earn more, but they contribute more to the system. Once that money is in the pot, there's a divergence between what the Western economies do and what the Eastern economies do. The Eastern economies, when I say Eastern, I mean China specifically, they invest in infrastructure so that their people are allowed to contribute to the economy more, and just from a moral perspective, to help them flourish in life. Now, unfortunately, the Western system has imposed austerity and basically just fumbled that money. So if we're going to talk specifics, China has the tallest bridge in the world. China has quite few of the longest tunnels in the world. China has more high-speed rail than the rest of the world combined. So what is all of this? It's infrastructural development. Chinese taxpayers have paid their taxes into the UK government. Chinese taxpayers have paid it into the Chinese government. The Chinese government has used that money to invest in infrastructure. That infrastructure, in turn, is an investment in the economy, which will wrap back round and will increase the amount of taxes that Chinese people pay because they're working more jobs, they're investing more in the economy. So infrastructure is a huge one. Another one is obviously housing. I mean, China had a problem that they built too many houses. So you've heard of all of these ghost towns. Although that's not really legitimate, it's not kind of the whole story. But there aren't people in China that are homeless because of a lack of housing. That is the problem in the UK. So investing in infrastructure, investing in housing, investing in people. So for example, there were so many people in poverty in China that the Chinese government had to come up with a plan on how do we fix this. So the Chinese government sent 3 million ministers, government ministers, to live in rural towns. And they identified exactly which regions and exactly which houses were poor. It was the minister's job to go to that person and help them develop their skills. Why are you poor? Why are you struggling? My mum's ill. Okay, I have health issues. Okay, I'm unskilled. Okay, so they provide sustenance and they provide the necessary support in order for that person to flourish. So let's say, for instance, if this person in this rural area has a healthcare issue, they will get free healthcare from the government. So it's a customizable plan. We have a one-size-fits-all. You would never in the UK hear that government ministers are moving up to Stoke or government ministers are moving down to Hastings in order to help people. They go there, they live there, and the job's not done until everybody in that area is alleviated from poverty. So in a nutshell, infrastructural development, housing, and building real-world skills for real-world people.
Okay, that will make sense to me. In terms of celebrating China and the strides they've taken to take people out of poverty, how would you respond to the criticism which is levied at a lot of people who support China in that perhaps we overlook some of the bad things China had to do in their great leap forward to get to where they are today?
Well, I'm not here supporting China. I'm not saying China is the best country in the world. What I'm saying is our economy is under strain. We have fumbled our economy. We're one of the richest countries in the world. We took wealth from everywhere in the world, and where's that money gone? It's gone into the hands of the elite, right? China doesn't allow that. And we've seen them not allow that, and we've seen the consequences of them not allowing that. We don't see this kind of exuberant wealth and these conglomerates in China have the power there that we do in England. So if we can take bits from other countries, if we can take the economic model of China, and we can take the liberalism model from Germany, and we can take the technology model from Japan. This is what we need to do as a nation in order to grow and develop, because we're behind right now. That doesn't necessarily mean that I support China. It doesn't necessarily mean that I endorse everything that China does.
Yeah.
China should rightly, like any other nation on earth, be criticized. But if they are to be criticized for what they've done wrong, they should also be endorsed for what they've done right. And what I'm saying here is, not only have they done right in regards to the economy, they've done the quickest economic poverty alleviation program in history since the beginning of time. I'm going to say it once again, 800 million people out of poverty in 40 years. No one has ever seen anything like that. What does that mean? It means they're doing something right. And if they're doing something right, we need to learn from it. We can't be as arrogant to say, but they're doing this wrong, but they're doing that wrong. Every country does things wrong. What are they doing right? How can we learn from them?